And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for masking and thank you for the distancing. All those having business with the town will be heard. A couple of things before we get started. As you notice, there was a sign-up sheet in the back, and that is a sheet that you sign up for item D, which is citizens' presentation. You do not have to sign up for the public hearing that will be held tonight. You do not have to sign up for the public hearing, but for the citizens' presentation, you do. And if you've got an agenda, if you follow along, you'll notice that before the night is over, there's also another citizens' place for comment, and that's for those of you that may have anything that you see in the meeting that you didn't quite understand, or you want an explanation, or whatever it may be as we go along with the meeting, okay? So you do not have to sign up for the public hearing. With that being said, I'm going to ask Paul to come forward, as we've been respectful to our clergy this time and just allowed the invocation to be delivered from inside. If you would join me and stand, please. And then after that, I'll ask Commissioner Dixon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Heavenly Father, once again, we come before your mighty throne of grace, giving thanks for all your many blessings of life. We are especially thankful for you sending your Son to walk on earth so that we may have everlasting life. Father, we pray for our nation, our state, and local communities as we continue to struggle with COVID. Bless our doctors, nurses, and caregivers during this time, and be especially close to those families that have been affected by this virus. Father, as we enter our time to attend the affairs of our town, we ask that you bless our elected officials to make decisions that are best for all. Father, we ask that you keep your loving arm of protection around us and help us to do your service. It is in your Son's holy name that we humbly pray. Amen.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, who's going to lead the pledge? Dixon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated, and thank you for being here. Item C on your agenda is, item D is the citizen presentation. Ms. Williams, what we ask you to do is come in and state your name and your address for our record, and then you continue, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is Ashanti Williams. I reside at 3740 Dr. Jones Road here in Farmville. I stand before you tonight to discuss the importance of the Autastic Extravaganza on April 17th from 1 to 4 at the Babe Ruth baseball field. The purpose of the event is to bring resources to the local community about autism and to raise awareness. I am a parent to an autistic son. He's very bright, he's intelligent, but not too many people know what autism is. So I just want to bring the community together with parents of those with autism and let them know that it's help out there, that if your child is showing any signs that there is someone out there that's going through what you're going through and you can get help. All the proceeds raised, I will be donating to the Sug Bundy Elementary School EC department to help give them resources as well as far as their pencils, and some of them are not potty trained, so they have diapers. We'll end the event with the Autism Awareness Walk and awards to those who raise the most funds. And I'm done.
Ms. Williams, thank you so much. And if you'll look around this gallery, you'll see some familiar faces that have been involved with ACEs for Autism for many years. So thank you, and we look forward to your event.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second person I have signed up is Celia Stone. Celia.
My name is Celia Stone, and I live at 3264 North Waverly Street in Farmville. 4 months ago, when delivering Meals on Wheels, my husband and I saw detour signs and that our normal route via Walnut Street could not be accessed. 2 months later, we still could not get down South Walnut. My first thought was, if these improvements were being made on North Waverly Street, would the roads have remained so torn up for so long? In March, I was on South George Street and encountered roads in complete disrepair. Friday, while on West Cotton Street, I turned around for fear I would damage a tire. West Cotton residents were parking on other streets because of potholes and rocks. I've spoken with 6 people from the affected area. One of them noted the irony on Walnut Street, yet she can't drive down Walnut to get to it. Rightly or wrongly, many of them perceive that it's taken so long to improve these roads due to their neighborhoods typically being left behind. Has the contractor been pressed to speed up the process or to tear up fewer streets at one time? How would you react if this current scenario were happening on your street? When you can, to move these improvements forward as quickly as possible, you should rest easy. If not, I urge you to treat this process the way you would for your neighborhood. Also, Meals on Wheels volunteers use the back door of our community center to get food for delivery. That door is extremely heavy and slams shut on people. It's been adjusted, but remains a safety issue. Many of our elderly residents are used to entering through the back door. There had been a Pitt County sign. Now they're being told to enter through the front door, walk 2/3 of the way through the building, and open a set of closed double doors to get to the senior room. Could we please make it more convenient for our seniors? It would cost relatively little money to replace that door and allow them quick access to the senior room. Let's honor our past.
Thank you, Celia. Next up, town manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Just have a couple comments here. There have been some questions recently about our conversion to well water from GC water. We are in the process of flushing hydrants and making that transition to our wells. As you recall, we use GUC water for about 6 months out of the year, and then in the summertime, we switch to using our wells for the other 6 months. This is the process we do twice a year. We are flushing lines, as I mentioned, started last week, and it should be going on for the next couple weeks. If you've noticed possibly a strong smell of chlorine in your water when you turn it on, especially first thing in the morning, or when you've been away and come home, that is due to the flushing. There's no problem or danger in drinking the water, using the water. It should clear up shortly. So I just wanted to mention that to you. Also, the new library is almost complete, and volunteers and town staff have been moving, assisting moving and shelving books and other materials at the library over the last couple of weeks. And the goal at this point is to open the library within the next couple of weeks. We don't have a firm date on that because there's a couple of things the contractor's finishing up, but it's very close. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Any board member have a question for David? Any comments? David, I will speak on behalf of the board. I think the number of comments we've had about how clean the town looks, I think everybody on the board would agree with that. We have really been receiving some accolades about how well the town looks, and I thank you for that. That'll bring us down to the financial report. It is in your pamphlet. Anybody have any questions for Amy concerning the financial report? Anybody? That'll bring us down to item G, changes, additions, deletions to the agenda. Any board member have any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? I would like, before, if I may, I would ask the board if you would consider adding item K2 after the public hearing, if you would consider, and give me some leadway at that point to talk about a financial arrangement for the Recreation Department. I'll be asking you to put something on the board, on the agenda for May, if that is possible, concerning a financial situation for the Recreation Department. Can I get a motion on it?
I make a motion that we accept your proposal to add K2 and the agenda as recommended.
Board, you've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda will be accepted with the one change being K2, which would be directly related to the Recreation Department. Special proclamation tonight. Is Lori here? Is there a representative here for Lori? Okay. I I guess what I'll do is just read this, and Dr. Hobbs, will you be reading a poem tonight?
Yes.
Commissioner Dixon, will you be reading one? I'll read the proclamation, and then I'll ask our commissioners to read their poem. Proclamation, National Poetry Month. Whereas the Academy of American Poets established the month of April as the National Poetry Month in 1996, and whereas the National Poetry Month seeks to highlight the extraordinary legacy of ongoing achievements of American poets, introduce Americans to the pleasure and benefits of reading poetry, brings poetry and poets to the public in immediate and innovative ways, and to make poetry an important part of our children's education. And whereas the National Poetry Month, under the leadership and the direction of the Academy of American Poets, is now the largest literary celebration in the world, and whereas the poetry enhances and enriches the lives of all Americans, and whereas the poetry, as an essential part of arts and humanities, affects every aspect of life in America today, including education, the economy, community pride, and development. And whereas the poetry has produced some of the nation's leading creative artists and has inspired other artists in fields such as music, theater, film, dance, and visual arts. Now, therefore, I, John O. Moore, Mayor of Farmville, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April the 1st through April the 30th as National Poetry Month. I call upon the public officials, educators, librarians, and all the people of Farmville, North Carolina to observe this month to celebrate the cultural riches of our community has to offer and recognize the important role of poetry in creating and sustaining the great nation with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs. Dated 5 April 2021. Commissioner Dixon, would you like to read first?
I sure will. I appreciate the opportunity. A couple years ago, I had the same opportunity to read. My wife picked one out, and so this year I asked my family to help pick out poems for me, and I actually got two. I got one from my kids and one from my wife. They're both short, and you can tell a lot about our family dynamic from me reading it, I think. So the first poem that was picked out by my kids is entitled "The Best Father I Know Is You," and I certainly appreciate them picking that out. And this one from my wife, entitled "Advice to Husbands" by Ogden Nash. To keep your marriage brimming with love in the loving cup. Whenever you're wrong, admit it. Whenever you're right, shut up.
Dr. Hobbs?
I too appreciate the honor of sharing a poem with you, and I want to give you some background on the person who wrote the poem because I think that's very important. It was Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. He was the son of a former slave, had an insatiable desire to get an education, was valedictorian of his high school class, got a BS, an MS, and a PhD from Chicago, and for 30 years he was the president of Morehouse College, Medical College, and he was the mentor for Dr. Martin Luther King. The name of his poem is "I Have Only Just a Minute." I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, can't refuse it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it.
Thank you, Dr. Hobbs. Thank you so much, and I hope we all support those activities that are going on there. That brings us down to item I of consent. Board, you've had a chance to look at this, just to bring your attention to a couple of things, the June meeting and the August meeting. For the June meeting, the July meeting will be in June, and the September meeting will be in August. Is there a motion to accept the items of for consent?
I move that we accept these items of consent.
Dr. Hobbs has made a motion that we accept the items for consent. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down to item J, the items for discussion and decision. And Justin, I think you're first up tonight. First item we have is increasing or decreasing the acreage lot to allow.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. You recall at your August 31st, 2020 Board of Commissioners meeting, this board voted to amend the animal ordinance to allow chickens to be kept in town so long as the applicant met the adopted setbacks and the total number of chickens allowed. These standards were based on the size of the property owner's lot, which were divided into 4 categories. You can have an acre or more, a half acre to 0.99 acres, a quarter acre to 0.49 acres, and then anything under a quarter of an acre. The board approved the minimum chickens was the setback requirements, but part of the approval was with the condition that for the first condition that the town would issue permits only to the property owners on of how the process would go in terms of submitting applications, doing site plan reviews. In that time, since then, about 6 months now, we've actually only received 3 permits for people who, on the half acre time period. I've received just as many, if not more, from individuals in the lot size categories, especially those in the quarter acre to 0.49 acre lot range. So what I'm requesting tonight is that the board consider to allow us to begin to issue applications to property owners who are on lots that are 0.25 acres to 0.49 acres. There's no change to the standards that was set at the August meeting in terms of the numbers of chickens as well as the setbacks. The number of chickens for a quarter acre to 0.49 acres would be a maximum of 5 chickens allowed with a 28-foot minimum setback from adjacent residential structures.
Anybody have any questions of Justin? Seeing no questions, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the changing of the lot size.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Justin. I think you need to stay right there, don't you?
Yes, sir.
The next item we have is consider the approval of the final plots for Dalton's Cove subdivision.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So this is a request from Houses BPR LLC requesting the approval of the final plat for Phase 1 of the Dalton's Cove subdivision. Final approval by the Board of Commissioners is needed in order to record the final plat, which would allow the county to assign addresses and in turn would allow the planning department to begin to issue zoning compliance as well as building permits for homes in the subdivision. Planning staff, along with the town engineer, have completed their review of the final plat and have both recommended approval. The final plat was unanimously approved by the planning board at their March 16th meeting. Just very quickly run through a couple staff observations here. First, the subject parcels are zoned R8, which does allow for single-family residences. All lots meet the required lot dimensions as established by the town zoning ordinance. DOT driveway permits have been approved and received by the town. All subdivision design standards and improvements have been met. There are no proposed street names which duplicate or are similar to existing street names in town. And the town engineer has made a recommendation to the town manager as to the amount of a performance guarantee for the infrastructure on the site. And the developer has provided the town with a check for this amount, which has already been deposited into the town's account. So that's all I really have for, as far as the staff report on this. I'll be glad to take any questions. I also have Rich Moore here as well. He can take any questions potentially you may have as well. But again, this time we're just looking for the board's approval for Phase 1 of Dalton's Cove.
Anybody have any questions of Richard? I think we can get some dry weather. That certainly would improve the conditions out there.
Certainly.
So, seeing no questions, is there a motion that we approve the final plat?
I move that we approve the final plat.
Dr. Hobbs has made a motion that we approve the final plats, Phase 1 of Dalton's Cove. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. The ayes have it. It brings us down to item 8. David, I think you got this, correct?
Actually, Rich Moore.
Rich Moore? Rich, I thought you were just here for all the water we've had out at. We've had a lot.
We have had a lot.
Thank you for being here.
I've got the next 2 things on your agenda. This first one, this is deals with the existing wastewater agreement the town has with Greene County. Greene County currently pumps water to Farmville primarily from what they refer to as the Greene County Water and Sewer District, which is the residential area around the Greene Central High School. It includes the Maury Correctional Institute, and then also includes sewer from a small industrial park that's located east of the town of Walstenburg. The existing interlocal agreement provides Greene County 300,000 gallons per day of capacity in terms of discharging to Farmville. Recently, Greene County completed a community development block grant infrastructure project that provided sewer to the Hedgefield community, which is located right off of 258, really right outside of Farmville. And as part of that project, there were about 49 taps that were put in, only about 26 homes that were physically connected to the sewer system. Based on the current discharge, average daily flow from Greene County to Farmville is currently in about the 185,000 gallons to 189,000 gallons per day limit, so under that current allocated capacity. But we felt it was appropriate that because of the expansion of the service area in the Hedgefield community, that Greene County pay a capacity fee to Farmville to allow those additional connections. And so what we've got for your consideration is an amendment to that existing wastewater agreement that provides the additional allocation for those service connections within Hedgefield and provides that payment to the town of Farmville from Greene County in the measure of $21,000. And the same calculation is consistent with what the original agreement was established at. So we felt it was appropriate that even though they're under the limit, for the capacity that they're getting for the benefit of serving those Hedgefield residents.
Anybody have any questions of Richard? Is there a motion that we accept the agreement with Greene County? Commissioner Smith has made a motion that we accept the agreement with Greene County. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Still up, Rich.
All right, the next item is financial assistance opportunity through the Division of Water Infrastructure through their Clean Water State Revolving Fund application process. The Division of Water Infrastructure is going to accept applications on April 30th. And in that cycle, they currently have about $4 million of available funding for grant assistance. And they're going to call it principal forgiveness loan, but it's grant. And those grant awards are based on economic thresholds that include, census established statistics with regards to median household income and other affordability criteria. And in addition to that, eligibility is based on the applicant's average water and/or sewer rates for 5,000 gallons of residential use. Based on the criteria, Farmville is eligible for a 100% grant under the program. The limitations are that under the current guidelines, $500,000 is the most grant award that can be made at this time under the program. So based on that criteria and that limitation, what we've done is to kind of look at a scope that would address a critical need that the town has, and at the same point, in the same situation, kind of keep under that $500,000 grant threshold. And so what I'm recommending for your consideration is to apply those funds to replace existing gravity sanitary sewer collection assets along Moore and Barrett Street. And this also happens to be an area that floods following some of these intense rainfall events. So we know it's an area where we've got some storm sewer issues and conflicts that exist as well. And even though there's no direct funding for storm sewer, if we can get funding to replace our sanitary sewer and we replace those cross connections, we can address that drainage problem in that area at the same time. And I think we can fit it under that $500,000 threshold. So what I'm asking for your consideration tonight is for authorization to apply for Clean Water State Revolving Funds to replace sanitary sewer in the Moore Street and Barrett Street area.
Anybody have any questions of Richard?
Is this the same project that's on Barrett Street and a continuation of that same project?
I would say kind of a continuation to a certain extent, a little bit different funding source, same principle. Trying to get rid of the 40-year-old aged infrastructure and rebuild some really poor condition streets.
A nice call the other day, thanking you for all the work you're doing, and I'll put Wes in the middle of this also. They were most appreciative of the work that's going. Chief, also, thank you for the speed bumps that you put down in certain areas of the Marlboro District. The folks are very appreciative of that. And it's been said you got to break an egg to make an omelet, and that's pretty much what we're doing. And some of that infrastructure's been down there. Dr. Hobbs will agree with this, I think. Some of it's been down there for 80 years, untouched. So thank you for that. Is there a motion that we authorize the application for the Division for Water Infrastructure? Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the resolution authorizing the application.
Commissioner Dixon's made a motion that we authorize application for the water infrastructure. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. That brings us down to item 11. Thank you, Rich. Ms. Williams, big supporter of ACE's autism, and very big. That brings down to number 10, consideration for amendments to the library meeting room use policy. David Miller. David.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. What I have for your consideration are amendments to the library's meeting room use policy. These amendments reflect the new meeting rooms in the new library, as well as the fee schedule for some of those rooms. The policy before you has been endorsed by the Library Board of Trustees, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of David? Any comments to David?
I thought it looked great.
Thank you.
Is there a motion that we approve this?
I will make a motion that we approve the fee structure and meeting room policy for the library.
Commissioner Ellis has made a motion that we approve this policy. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Now, David, is this next item you and Diane, or is this you, or is it Diane, concerning the consideration for the Farmville Community Center use policy? Diane, you got this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It is somewhat similar, but basically I have talked with David Miller to kind of just see where our schedules kind of align, so that way the policies are similar. So with the upcoming aesthetic modifications to both the community center building and the meeting center, or the meeting space, we are asking that the board consider the policy amendments so that way the price does include the cost of a facility attendant.
Okay. Anybody got any questions of our brand new recreation director? Any questions? Is there a motion?
Go ahead, Bert. I'll make a motion that we approve the operating and rental policies for the Farmville Community Center.
There you go. There's a motion on the floor that we approve this. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, the ayes have it. Item number 12 will have a little twist on it when it, in just a moment. I'll go to Dr. Hobbs for that in just a moment. David, I think you got this concerning the extension for the easement for the town of Farmville, right? Or is that Justin? Justin, you got it? Okay.
And more for number 12, since this is representing Nathan R. Cobb Senior Foundation, and as president of that foundation, I would like to recuse myself from any voting.
Okay. Is there a motion that we allow Dr. Hobbs not to vote?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Hobbs, you have been excused.
Thank you.
Justin.
Thank you. So the town of Farmville is in receipt of a request to grant an easement across a portion of the parking lot and adjacent curb space of parcel 01823, on which is situated the Farmville Community Center. The grantee, Alma Hobbs, owns an adjacent parcel on which she wishes to construct a pavilion as an events facility and which bears the address of 3615 South Walnut Street in Farmville, identified as Pitt County parcel number 12663. This parcel lacks direct access from either South Walnut or South Main Street. With this being the case, they have requested an easement, as I mentioned, across the community center lot, just across the car space there. This would be a 40-foot easement. Myself and public works staff went out to take a look at the property and determine the amount of space that will be needed along this curb in order to provide adequate access to this future proposed pavilion. Included in your packet is a copy of the easement agreement, which has been reviewed by staff as well as the town attorney. At this time, we're seeking a request from the board to grant the easement as presented.
Okay. You've heard Justin. Any questions or comments for Justin? Is there a motion?
I make a motion we grant the easement from the town of Farmville out to the Hobbs for the Cobb Foundation, whichever.
There you go. Granting the easement across the portion of the community center parking lot to serve the adjacent parking lot. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it carries. Thank you. Now I think this one's you, David, finally.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In your packet, there's FMLA emergency sick leave extension proposal. And just for the record, just want to, of course, this issue for every year now. The original Families First Coronavirus Response Act was enacted in March 2020, and as part of that act, it required that employers provide up to 80 hours COVID sick leave for various things. If you had COVID or a family member had COVID or you needed to care for a child because of COVID or care for a relative, that kind of thing, or go get tested. There was various reasons that you could use the sick leave. So that was part of that original act. That expired December 31st of 2020. There was a second act in December 27th of 2020 called the Consolidated Appropriations Act, and that was signed, and it gave the employers an opportunity to choose, but it didn't require, to continue to bind the employer to the original act's leave requirements through March 31st. And we, at that time, January 4th meeting, 2021, this board agreed to extend the sick leave less any of the 80 hours that was used before December 31st to allow employees to use that as needed. That expires or expired March 31st. So now we have another act, the American Rescue Plan Act, which was enacted March 11th. 2021 permits employers to extend it again through September 30th, 2021, with an additional 80 hours of emergency COVID-19 leave. The same circumstances, it expanded a little bit, like getting tested again or having to follow up, quarantine or whatever, quarantining with a, I guess contact tracing requires you to quarantine or whatever until you have a negative test, and oftentimes that's 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever. So this, if you approve this, it would allow that extension through September 30th. It would grant up to another 80 hours of COVID sick leave. And I guess the advantage, obviously, from a public health standpoint is that you allow people leave if they really need it rather than coming to work when they're sick or whatever. In addition, there are certain tax breaks that are afforded employers who do this, such as credit of the employer portion of the Social Security and Medicare payments. So in essence, you could get credit back on just the leave that was taken, not everything. And I will say this, I don't know the exact number, but I think Amy can attest. Even though we've been doing this for over a year, or about a year, we have had very little sick time that's been used. No one is maxed out. Most people are either use zero or very little, maybe 10 hours, 20 hours, or whatever. A lot of, employees, of course, haven't had to take advantage of this. So the recommendation is to go ahead and extend this to September 30th of 2021 and allow that to be taken. I will say that, and if you read in my reports, I always give you a report every couple of weeks and always put in a report like how many cases we've had. And like in the last report I gave you last week, we've had 0 since the last report, and usually it's 1 or 0. So we have very few cases, and which is very good, and we're being very careful. So I would certainly recommend that you consider extending this. It is voluntary; you don't have to do it, but if you do, then it would have to be extended through September 30th.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the town manager? No questions. Seeing none, is there a motion we accept this?
I'll make a motion that we accept this.
Commissioner Ellis made a motion that we extend this as per your directive, David. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. That brings us down to the public hearing. Before I turn the podium over to Justin, there are a lot of new faces in here tonight, and I want to go over what a public hearing is about so that you will understand. First and foremost, all of you that are here, you do not have to sign up, and you will hear that again. So I'm going to go over this so that we have a good understanding of how this is conducted. Justin will explain the ordinance as sent down by the planning board. The board will ask questions if necessary, and after that, when the board is finished, I will open for the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak on the subject at hand will be given an opportunity. You do not have to sign up. You will need to state your name and address for the record. You're allowed to address the board as a whole, not an individual board member or anyone in the gallery, only the board. You will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Amy will keep the time. She'll signal me at 2.5 minutes, and I'll give you something like this. Not that, I won't startle you. I'll raise my hand, giving you 30 minutes to wrap up. You can, did I say 30 minutes? Okay. This mask and trying to read through these glasses is difficult. You can yield your 3 minutes to another speaker, giving that speaker 6 minutes. A speaker can only receive 3 minutes from one person. In other words, 2 people cannot yield their time to one person so that they can have 9 minutes. The max a person can have at the podium is 6 minutes. So if you choose to yield your time, please be aware of that. After everyone who wishes to speak has spoken, the board will then begin discussion. And once we begin discussion, that will be a board discussion only. If a motion is made, and only if a motion is made, and if a vote is needed, I will ask Commissioner Dixon and Mayor Pro Tem Jamin Dixon and Bert Smith to excuse themselves from the vote. That will be their decision if they choose to ask this board to excuse them from the vote. At that time, it will be their option to explain why they are excusing themselves, and then the board will vote, and then we will proceed on with the motion. As long as there is no motion on the floor, all the commissioners will be allowed to participate in the discussion. Now, before we get started, there are a few things I want to clear up. First of all, Justin, unless I'm wrong, is there anything, and if it is, bring it to me, that advocates a yearly fee in this new ordinance? Is there anything in there that I might have missed that says there is a yearly fee that you can pay this much for? There is nothing in there. This ordinance has been an interesting ordinance to write. This ordinance is not to keep food trucks out of Farmville, not at all, but to welcome them and to regulate them. It is our hope that with this new ordinance, we can include a variety of food options for the citizens of Farmville. With that being said, I'll ask the presenter, Justin, to come forward for the public hearing concerning the food truck ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. So, at the direction of the Board of Commissioners, staff was asked to reevaluate the existing ordinance allowing food trucks to operate in the town of Farmville, as well as commercial food vendors. A moratorium on the issuing of new food truck permits was enacted in October of 2020 and was extended in January of 2021 to allow for more time to discuss the matter. Following discussions with an existing food truck operator and discussions among commissioners at the annual retreat, several amendments have been proposed. These amendments were reviewed by the town attorney, and the planning board reviewed the proposed amendments at their March 16th meeting and recommended approval of the amendments with the recommendation that the board consider a reduced daily permit fee. So to go through quickly to this, and keep in mind that this was an ordinance that we did have in place, so we didn't have to necessarily start from scratch on this, but these were meeting during the board retreat in February. The first was the addition of a commercial food vendor's definition. As you recall, the issue popped up last year of having difficulty defining exactly what Chick-fil-A was when they were coming to town. Chick-fil-A did not meet the criteria of a food truck because the food was being prepackaged and brought over, but we didn't have a definition that comfortably placed them in our vendors and peddlers. So we set out to create a definition for a commercial food vendor, in which Chick-fil-A or anybody else for that matter who would bring prepackaged food from a restaurant over, they would fall under this category. Next was the removal of the annual food truck permit fee. We did have 3 tiers of food truck permits under our old ordinance. The first was the annual permit, which was $100. There was a daily permit fee that was $50, and then we had a town on those. So what we did with this ordinance now with the amendment, we removed the annual food truck permit fee and have kept the daily. If it's not a town under the daily permit fee under the food truck permit. This change prompted the next change, which was an amendment to the daily permit fee. This board, on your second day of the retreat in February, had a discussion about this, and at that time had notified staff that you had come to an agreement of $125 per day of a food truck. Next was the addition of limits on days of operation per week. The board wanted to limit that and discussed to limit it to 2 days per week. Currently, the most frequent food truck operator we do have in town is operating 2 days a week. So we want to set it so that it did not limit the amount of time that he was allowed to operate in town each week. And also, I think that goes to help, with potentially diversifying the selection that's available to us. Next would be the trucks operating in town per day. There was concern about operation each day. So the board discussed placing a limit on the next was an amendment of the distance from food truck to brick and mortar. As you recall, in the initial ordinance, the distance was 100-foot radius from the front door of any slight change to this. The 100-foot has remained the same. I know there was some discussion of extending it to 250, but we kept that at 100 feet. But the only change to that is it's no longer from the front door of the brick and mortar, but it's from the closest parcel boundary line on which a brick and mortar operates. And then finally, there were the addition of zoning requirements for commercial food vendors and food trucks. First, for food vendors, there's a requirement that like a Chick-fil-A would operate in our. The reason for this, we talked with communities that had a similar setup with Chick-fil-A, and they said that they generally allowed Chick-fil-A to set up in their. The setup there was because based on for brick and mortar Chick-fil-A were to come to that area. So using that mindset, we made the recommendation in the ordinance that commercial food vendors, typically being your fast food variety, we would have them operate in the highway district, which is the zoning district that would allow drive-through restaurants. The other requirement affecting operate operate in any of the zoning districts in town with the exception of the central business district. Food trucks would not be allowed to operate in the central business district. However, operation in the central business district would already be relatively difficult given the 100-foot radius that you're looking at. That's one central business, a relatively small, compact district, but we would allow the food trucks in all other zoning districts. So that's an proposed change to the ordinance, or that the board may have at this time.
For the benefit of our distancing, the working number that was, the 125 was the working number. All this is up for debate tonight with the board.
That's correct.
Just to be clear with the gallery. Okay. All right. All right. Anybody have any questions of Justin? Is at this time?
I got one.
Commissioner Dixon?
The 111.22 Regulation C, commercial food vendors, what you just went over it, but does that mean that commercial food vendors would only be allowed to operate in highway business? Is that what you're?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, that was it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Justin? Justin, don't get too far away. Town managers, you got anything you want?
No, sir.
Okay. As I said earlier, all you got to do is come up and get your name and address. And if you are yielding your time, I think in the essence of time, just let us know who's yielding the time, okay? If that's agreeable with the board. Is that okay? Or do we want the person that's going to yield their time come up and speak to town attorney? Can you help me?
Technically, you probably need the person yielding the time.
Okay. If you intend to yield your time, we'll ask that you come up, give your name and your address, and state that you're yielding your time. Name, I'll ask it. This public hearing is now open. Anyone that wishes to speak, welcome to Farmville, and please come through the podium.
Mark Shirley, 2000 Evermay Farm Road, Walstenburg, and I yield my time to Billy Strickland.
Mr. Strickland, welcome to Farmville, sir.
Good afternoon. Attorney Billy Strickland from Goldsboro, North Carolina, 112 North Williams Street. I have an office there, office in Kinston. I have 10 in Eastern North Carolina, Mr. Kellum, that I focus on litigation in federal and state court. Before my time gets started, Mayor, I do have a question as far as the conflicts of interest that you were discussing earlier, but you said that the conflicts would not be that the vote or the exclusion of those commissioners would not be decided until such time that a motion's made?
If there is a motion to vote, I tried to make that as clear as I could. If there is a vote here tonight, if there is a vote, I'm asking two of the commissioners to excuse themselves. Yes.
But isn't that generally done during the discussion, so there's no persuasion?
I'm acting on the counsel of, I'll refer that to our town attorney.
Because otherwise, Mr. Edwards, otherwise the people with conflict of interest that have economic interest in it would be able to persuade the crowd one way or the other commissioners during the discussion. It's my understanding that you have a conflict, you're conflicted out of the discussion as well as the vote.
I would agree with you on that.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. I have no problems with that. At that point, as I said earlier, I would ask that Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Dixon excuse themselves, but that is their position to ask.
Thank you. All right.
Stop the clock on them now. Hold on. Hold this time. Commissioner Smith, would you like to? All right, there's Commissioner Smith has asked to excuse himself from the vote. Is there a motion that we do this?
I'll make the motion to allow Commissioner Smith to recuse himself.
All right, there's a motion that Commissioner Smith be excused from this vote and this process. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Commissioner Dixon.
I'll ask to be excused from the conversation and the vote.
There you go. Is there a discussion? Is there a motion, excuse me, is there a motion?
Make a
Excuse-
motion that Mr. Dixon will be recused from voting.
All right. Commissioner Hobson made the vote that Commissioner Dixon be excused. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Commissioner Dixon and Commissioner Smith will be excused from this discussion and the vote. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If I may. So 6 minutes is relatively quickly, especially for attorneys that are pretty wordy. But first I'd like to say is everybody that's in this peanut gallery back here, please raise your hand.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. I made it very clear, counsel, sir, that you will address this board, not the gallery.
Okay, well, I would like for the board to recognize how many people are here for this, so you don't have to listen to everybody all night, because you're only allowed to yield 3
We are
minutes.
allowing them to yield their time, sir. You will address the board, please. Thank you.
So I understand, and you understand my position that this is just an egregious ordinance, even though it's not ordinance yet, it's proposed ordinance. What the original ordinance was an annual permit, $150, so that's pretty much the city that the most expensive was maybe Durham at $200-something. So no problem. But then what's proposed is annual with only allowing 2 days a week. Instead of running a business like everybody else, which is every day, you can only do it 2 days at $125. So if my client decides he wants to be here every day that he's allowed to be here, it's over $12,000 to operate his business in this town. Which is 168-174 does authorize the city to do expenses, but it's specific as it does not infringe with the allow for us to, it says the section creates a right to conduct lawful business or earn a livelihood, which is Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution. So it's pretty clear that we're allowed as Americans, and in particular North Carolinians, to actually earn a living without the government suppressing it by overburdensome regulations, which $125 a day permit fee, I would submit, is excessive. What other job, what other business has to pay $120 government to operate? Besides that, in Farmville, who is earning that kind of money? You would have to earn $1,000 to $1,500 a day to justify a $125 permit per day. Now, there is a litany of case law that prohibits any and all action like this. In the BBK holding, it talks about equal protection, interstate commerce. You cannot use protection. Specifically, it says a state statute that clearly discriminates against interstate commerce is unconstitutional unless the discrimination is demonstrably justified by valid factors unrelated to economic protectionism. And that's what this is, economic protectionism. It is nothing but, if you take this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, and line it up to Mark Shirley and his business, you can come but one conclusion, that is to run that man out of this town and anybody like him. Even down to the distance, 100 feet from the door, he could sit at the lot he was at. 200, 250 foot from the door, he can't. It eliminates him from that position. He's not allowed to conduct business in a business district. I mean, what does that sound like? The most compelling is Tredence Enterprises, Inc. versus Onslow County. And they did exactly what you guys are trying to do, or what was being proposed here, which is trying to regulate a certain business. And then what it was a movie theater that provided somebody like a date or accompaniment. And they were talking about more and turpitude. And the city came up with this high price ordinance that you had to pay, plus a bunch of regulations. But what they didn't think about was, oh, wait a minute, babysitters, nannies, massage parlors, and they ran into all kinds of problems with that, so they made exceptions to that. And even with all those exceptions, the court said it shot it down. It says this is irreprehensible that you have something like this enacted. And so if you look at your definitions, it says commercial, the definitions on food truck is readily movable trailer or motorized vehicle that's registered to serve food. So I got to thinking about it, because the Tredence case explicitly talked about some of these exceptions, but I got to thinking about, how about an ice cream truck, hog cookers, Girl Scout cookies? Grubhub, Uber Eats, Meals on Wheels. Meals on Wheels, the young lady back here was here today. This would apply to them. So Meals on Wheels now has to pay this kind of permit fee? Food deliveries. I kept hearing this thing about the Chick-fil-A, but I didn't quite understand what we were talking about. Pizza Hut. How about Parker's Barbecue? It's my understanding Parker's Barbecue comes down here and caters to some of the local churches. So all of a sudden now they have to pay $120, because that's what the definition says. And if it's not tailored to that, and it gets narrowly tailored to my client, then that is direct discrimination against him. So I implore you, please, there's nothing wrong with regulating for the health and welfare and the safety. He's not selling guns or bombs or anything, he's selling food, okay? I still have 41 seconds, Mayor. And so what we're asking is to be sensible about it. Be sensible and just, yes, have the regulations, what's required, is equipment, sanitation, and then an annual permit fee, just like every other town has out there, which makes it viable for him to make a living and viable for the town to actually have different kinds of foods available to them. And I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Riggs?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. We appreciate you allowing us to be here. My name is Jonathan Riggs. I live on Highway 121 on the Greenville side of Farmville. Takes me about 5 minutes to get here, but I'm just out in the country. I'm the chairman of the Libertarian Party here in Pitt County. The Libertarian Party has been following this issue closely. We are seriously concerned about it. We've talked with a number of citizens of the town of Farmville. We've talked with affected businesses. We've done some research and gathered some facts and done some investigation on this matter. We've taken this very seriously, and we are very concerned about what's being proposed before you today. I would like to thank the commissioners for doing the right thing who have chosen to recuse themselves. Thank you for leading with a good example. Your constituents appreciate that, I'm sure. What's being proposed is, simply put, over-regulation. This is over-government. This is poor governance. It's borderline oppressive. I think it needs to be repeated. What's being proposed is shifting from a $100 a year option for a permit to $125 per day. I think it's important to think about those back to back. You're going from $100 a year to $125 per day. That is significant. That is borderline oppressive. I've echoed some of what Mr. Strickland, the former speaker, mentioned about this being a somewhat vague ordinance that's been written. I believe that it is poorly written and could be interpreted in a number of different ways that may not be the intent of this board. I would invite you to please consider that this evening. We, the Libertarian Party, feel that this is contrary to both individual and economic liberty here in the town of Farmville. It's been mentioned that one of the intents behind this ordinance change is to promote diversity and to control how many food trucks are in town. Why does that have to be up to the municipal government? Let the citizens speak with their wallets and with their stomachs about what they want to see in town. I assure you, somebody's not going to set up here for days on end throughout the year if nobody's buying their food. I would encourage you all to consider that. Please take individual and economic liberty into account. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase before, paralysis by over-analysis. Has anybody heard that? I've heard that a few times myself. My father likes to coin that. Well, this is eviction by over-restriction. We find that very concerning. We think that you will do the right thing. We encourage you to please take this into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Public hearing is still open. Anyone like to speak?
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. I would like to address this body regarding the ordinance. First of all, I think the fee is too high. Sorry, my name
Madam
is
Mayor,
Etzel.
you got to tell me who you are because it's hard to see behind your mask, please.
I am sorry. My name is Etzel Mason. I'm a resident of Farmville. I've been here about close to 40 years now. Farmville has a way from time to time of trying to put itself into a bubble. And when it does that, it restrains commerce in lots of different ways. I've actually heard somebody say more than once that no one should sell real estate in the town of Farmville unless they live here. I find that a rather foolish statement because Farmville could and should grow. But as long as efforts like this ordinance that's being proposed is approved, what this ordinance does, like other things that have happened in the past, is that it restricts growth in this community. I do understand the notion of protecting the brick and mortar businesses in our town. I shop local, I buy here all the time. I don't like to go to Greenville. I only go there if I have to. But I can tell you that restricting growth with something like food trucks to protect our restaurants, you have to think about the full picture, because you may feel like you're protecting our local businesses by putting an ordinance like this into place. But what you're doing is that you're prohibiting all of our citizens from taking advantage of a variety of food. Now, I'm not saying food truck food is really great, healthy, it tastes great, but our citizens deserve to have a variety of businesses to meet their needs from time to time. The idea that your food truck can't be in the central business district makes no sense to me. The idea that you can only have one thing, let's say the May Museum decides to have a couple of food trucks on their grounds to celebrate something. And that means that Duck Rabbit can't have a couple of food trucks down there to have their own little celebration. The ordinance, I think, is well meant, but it is too restrictive for business growth. It's about competition. Healthy towns have healthy competition on every business. And for our restaurants, if they're really feeling the pinch, let's face it, the pandemic has really been difficult, but they don't really do any marketing. They need to contact somebody like you, John Moore, and put a marketing package together if they feel like the food trucks are inhibiting their own growth. You know, we're about growing our community and our town and our businesses and shutting down one part of the opportunity for people to come into town, make some money.
Thank you, ma'am.
And do things. Yes, thank you very much. I hope you will
It's good to
consider
see you, too. Thank you. It's hard to see you. Anyone else like to speak? Anyone else?
Good evening. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Shantae Hopkins. I live at 4347 Apartment D, Bakers Boulevard, Farmville, North Carolina. And I'd like to yield my time.
To
Miss Celia Stone.
Okay. Ms. Stone, are you speaking?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you, Celia. Thank you very much. Ms. Hopkins, would you like to come back and state your position? This can be a little confusing. I'd like to think we laid it out as best we could at the beginning, so please.
So I would like to say thank you again to the
Yes, ma'am.
mayor and the Board of Commissioners for having us here today. This transparency in government is, what allows for us to have, civic engagement, so I do appreciate it. In the interest of the businesses and the business growth here, I am very interested only for the fact that I've grown up here and lived in Farmville almost all of my life, but for the last 10 years, I've been in Washington, D.C. So to come back and see that Farmville has not grown, if not deteriorated in my absence, it's appalling to know that the mob mentality of not allowing people to come and businesses to grow, and we have a desperate need for economic growth and business development here. I love Little Rocket. I love Bonnie's Cafe. I used to love Cubby's. I used to love Jack Cobb, but we need a variety of food options, whether it be healthy or not. It's just absurd for future business owners or someone that is looking to own a business. I have a cousin who works in pastries and works in sweets, and he is looking forward to, you know, one day opening a business here in Farmville. But to know that the innovation of movement, to know that you can go other places and then take advantage of them economically, not just the economic, but, you know, give them an opportunity to experience what you have to offer. I just think it's really a downright shame, because here in Farmville, the only time we get other food options is during the Dogwood Festival, which has now been canceled for about 2 years. So I would like to, you know, hope that you all open your ears to what we are saying here as citizens, and just taking it to account that we would like to welcome new businesses here, even if it is just food trucks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone would like to speak? Seeing none, I now declare this public hearing closed. Justin, back on the podium.
Oh, wait a minute. Can we ask questions?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Do we ask questions at this point?
You mean of Justin?
Justin we can, but I'm not sure of the gallery. I would pass on that.
Okay.
Okay, we've not done it in the past. I would like to add before we put Justin up there, I do want to reiterate this again, if you don't mind. What we're looking at tonight is a way to welcome and regulate the food trucks. That's what we're trying to do. And at the same time, include a variety of options for the citizens. That's what I'd like to do. I mean, that's what this ordinance is designed to do, and I think I speak for the board on that. I don't think that this ordinance is designed or singling out any one individual at all. I had the opportunity to speak with a food truck operator, given some instructions that were shared at the planning board. We've all done our talk to whom we could talk to and so forth and so on as we prepared for this. As we begin discussion, Justin, if it's agreeable with you, does anybody have any questions about the distancing right first of where we are? Mr. Strickland mentioned 100 feet and 250 feet and that sort of thing, and that resonated with me. Is there anybody that would like to address that with Justin? I'm going to try to take this point by point, Justin, if you don't mind.
Sure. Can I just offer a
Sure, please
clarification
do.
quickly on
Please
that?
do.
Yeah. The reference to the 250, that was what we had talked, that was talked about at a point during the retreat back in February, but the 250 number, that's gone away. That's still at 100. That was existing in the old ordinance, the 100 feet.
Just to be clear for the gallery, because I don't know if our system's working properly, what we had before the moratorium is what we still have.
With the only modification to that is that instead of it now being from the front door of the brick and mortar,
Right.
it is now from the nearest parcel boundary. So
Okay.
whatever the parcel in which that brick and mortar restaurant sits,
Okay.
that measurement's from that parcel. It's easier for us as a staff to track it based off of the distance from the parcel as opposed to the
Right.
actual location of the door.
And the annual fee, and help me, just reaching back, the annual fee was taken off the table because a particular individual that was telling us about food trucks said that may not be such a good idea. And we looked at it, and having $3,600, which was suggested at the time up front, would have put it out of reach for some of the food trucks, correct?
That seems to ring a bell, yes, sir.
Okay. Another point in there, Town Manager, I'll ask you before, because I think the biggest issue, unless I'm reading this wrong, the biggest thing we're dealing with is the cost per day. Is that what we're dealing with pretty much?
I would say it's a fair assessment.
Okay. Now keep in mind, audience, that there will only 3 people to discuss this. That'll be Commissioner Elks, Commissioner Shackelford, and Commissioner Hobbs. Okay? So that's where the discussion will begin. Okay? Did I miss anything, Town Attorney, Town Manager? We miss anything moving forward?
I think
Okay. Now, folks, y'all may think that this is strange, different, or whatever, but this is the first public hearing that we've had of this nature in over 4 or 5 years. And that's why I want to make for sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. Okay, did we miss anything moving forward? before opening it up for discussion? Okay? All right, with that being said, board, it is now open for discussion for any questions, comments that you have for Justin.
Yeah.
Dr. Hobbs.
Yeah, I have, my question is very similar to what you just enumerated, but I don't know that I've heard an answer to it. I did listen to what you said, and like Mayor Moore, I heard the price, the cost per day was an issue, the distance was an issue, and where you could park it, meaning locality or vicinity. So my question is, what would be reasonable in all of this that would be different from what was proposed?
In terms of all three? Well, as we've gone through this process, I've, submit you guys, the prices for several municipalities around the state. Admittedly, I believe that, just from looking at those, our $125 fee just for daily is a bit high compared to what some other communities have. What that final number agreed upon is, that's, not for me individually to make that decision, but I know that's something that this board has wrestled with for quite some time and coming to that. So I don't know that I've got the, exact number for you for that. I think as far as the other two items go, a lot of that, I think what we have in the ordinance, I think is reasonable in that. In fact, a lot of what we had when we developed our ordinance was based off of some existing food truck ordinances that had been introduced. I believe Surf City North Carolina was actually the original ordinance that kind of, when we started this process back in 2019, that was the original ordinance that we looked at, that looked at the, 100-foot from the front door. And I know that's, in researching some ordinances, even outside of North Carolina, that's, a requirement that's been in several ordinances. So that's not something exclusive to us in terms of the distancing, from the existing brick and mortar. As for the zoning, the location, that really is coming back to, again, an issue within the central business district of really finding a suitable location for them to set up, because it's keeping in mind that in addition to not being able to set up, you can't set up on town property, additionally to the trying to maintain the 100-foot radius location. So you're really going to find difficulty in being able to set up. The other difficulty that you run into, as you're aware, we do have a difficulty with parking in our downtown district, and so if you do have food trucks that are located in the central business district, you then create that opportunity to put a further stress on the parking issues that already exist. So food trucks can locate outside of that, just outside of that, within the general business district, which surrounds the central business district, and they can generally find some lots there to set up on that would not cause that as much conflict during the lunchtime hours, which is typically when most of the food trucks are in town. But that was sort of the reason and justification behind the exclusion from the central business district. But again, the food trucks will be welcome in all other zoning districts in town.
Anything else, Dr. Hobbs?
No, that clarifies it for me, because it suggests to me that what is being proposed is not in concrete. It can be changed.
Right. Commissioner Ellis?
As most of you know, and this has been a big controversy for me, I don't have any questions of Justin, but I have some things I'd like to say, if that's okay. Or would you rather me wait?
I would ask if Commissioner Shackford has anything he'd like to add at this point first. Commissioner Shack, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. This is a public hearing, please.
I realized that our fee was $100 for an annual fee, and when you place an annual fee, you are saying you have this forever, from January 1st through December the 31st, and you're done. I realize that not having an annual fee will mean that we have control over if there's something going on, instead of just, oh, this is my day to be here. I am not in agreement with the $125 fee per day. but I'm also not in agreement to have just a flat $100 fee. Our brick and mortar restaurants are important, our new business is important, and people coming into town to want to start a new business is very important. We have some people in our town that started out their businesses as a mobile, I'm not going to call it necessarily a food truck because some are food and some are not, but a mobile, and then when they were able, they were so happy here that they put down brick and mortar and want to be here, and we want them here. We want the food trucks here. We want our citizens to have a variety, but I cannot and will not vote for a $100 fee to stay in place annually. I think we need to come to a compromise. A food truck, yes, may rent their electricity. A food truck normally does not have to use town water, does not use our trash, and our brick and mortar businesses pay for those every month. They have to pay for all of those things. Normally a food truck or another truck coming in will report their funds to the state, but they don't report them to us. So we don't get tax money from them except for the little bit that the state may give us if that is the case. But I will not vote on the $125 as a fee, but for each visit, but nor will I vote for a very simple $100 for an annual visit.
Okay. So here we are. We know what you're not going to do. Dr. Hobbs?
Well, I have to agree with Commissioner Ellis. I think there needs to be a compromise. I do agree with that. And I also agree with her that we are changing and updating a policy that's no longer in existence. So if we don't do something tonight, we don't have a policy at all. And I think we need to have something to govern us until a definite decision is made. And if we need to make some compromises and modify or refine where we are, then we just need to buy a little time to do that. And I was wondering if we could make a motion in concept and approve to amend it with the option to revisit the per day, 125, which everybody seems to think is too much. Is that possible to do that?
Well, I would, let me yield to Brenda because I may end up having to pass the gavel here before this is over, and that's what I'm trying to avoid, okay?
I respect exactly what you said, Commissioner Hobbs, but I want this issue discussed and no one else can discuss. On Chris, and discuss what fee we're going to session on that. Is correct or not?
That's correct. There's no basis to go into closed session on this subject.
Right. So it's got to be something that we've got to discuss and come up with. Justin has worked extremely hard on this for the last 3 months. We're 6 months into this moratorium, and we need to make a decision about what we're going to do. The discussion has to be held here.
Okay.
There is a perception that this was targeted, and that's not true. This is designed for there are 20-some food trucks in Pitt County licensed. And Justin, I understand all they got to do is come to you and ask for the permit for the day to be here. So there are other food trucks to be considered in this as far as wanting to come and be a part of Farmville. I think and this is not a motion. What figure are you looking at for a day? Can I ask? What you looking at?
I have a minimum and I have a maximum.
What's your max?
My max is $75.
That's your max, 75. Dr. Hobbs, I feel like an auctioneer
My
here.
minimum was 50, and my max was 75.
All right, time out. David, you ever coach girls softball? I'm in the middle up here, okay? What I'm hearing is $75. Now, let me just put this out there for discussion. I'm hearing $75 a day and then accept the rest of the ordinance.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay, you will have your opportunity. Let us discuss this, and let's all be nice to each other, okay? I have dreaded this meeting for this very reason. I want us all to be kind, I want us all to be nice, and I definitely want us all to be respectful. And if you all will give us our opportunity to discuss what we need to discuss, I would really appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I've overstepped my bounds by saying that because I have just knocked Mayor Moore right out of the seat. But I'm not going to sit here and try to do the very best I can for every citizen in Farmville for you all to sit out there and murmur and talk and tell us no, 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 no. We want the opportunity to do the very best job for every one of you in this town, whether you live here or not. If you come to visit, we want to give you the best opportunity we can. If you live here, we want to give you the best opportunity. So please be kind and respectful.
We had the public hearing and no one offered a price. Where we are now is you're saying that your minimum was
My
70.
minimum was 50 and max was 75.
That's per day.
Yes.
And you're saying 75. That's what I'm hearing.
Max.
Max, no more than $75 a day. There is no annual fee involved.
No.
Which means if I come here and I pay my $75 for that day and I don't like it, then I don't have to come back.
Correct.
All right, now what does it mean if and another food truck's here and then the third food truck wants to come, they're not coming. Is that correct? Only two per day. All right? Oh yeah, this is your time.
I am not opposed if there's a special big function or whatever, but
If there's a big function, that would be a sponsored event, right? Pretty much.
well, it would be like Mrs. Mason said, that if there was something going on and Duck Rabbit wanted to, and the main, let's don't even say the main museum, let's do something else, the Little Red School wanted to.
Right.
And so I just want to make sure that we have some
Can you address that, Justin?
leeway in that maybe? Because I think it's only fair to have two here, if they're going to come during the day at lunch, I think it's food trucks that are here as well as our brick and mortar to be able to have, to know that, well, I'm going to use Mark as an example, that Mark's not going to have, if he decides to come to Farmville, that he's not going to have 5 more food trucks, you know, that are set up around town that's, you know, whatever. I just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a circle to keep from an event or a fun activity happening that's not a town-sponsored event.
Sure. And again, this is all up for, discussion this evening. I mean, if this board wanted to remove a maximum number of food trucks that, could be allowed in town per day, that's certainly a discretion of this board. Again, nothing's set in stone at this point.
Let me fry one fish at a time, okay? I'll come back to that. So right now, what we got to look at is the $75 a day, and then we can revisit the number of food trucks. Okay, hold that thought. Brenda's made her statement. Dr. Hobbs, let me hear from you on this before we boil this cabbage down.
Well, a clause for exceptions.
Sorry, what's that?
Could you not have a clause for exceptions?
Clause for exceptions?
Because you're going to have some exceptions. It's in there already?
Yeah. And just to clarify, and this may be something that I, seeing some of the discussions that have been going on for a couple weeks. Want to clarify just a couple of things. And I think we touched on a little bit earlier. There are some events that have been referred to. I think those will fall under the town sponsored. Nothing has changed under the town sponsored category. That was in the original ordinance, and that will remain in the amended ordinance, the town sponsored. But just to clarify, I know there have been some discussions about, potentially impacting Dogwood. Just to clarify, this ordinance has no impact on the Dogwood Festival. The Dogwood Festival handles its own vendor applications, and it would just be, somebody who's already gone through Amy Dogwood Festival to come to me to get an application. So town-sponsored events are kind of left out of this discussion at this point, as well as the Dogwood Festival, just to clarify on that. So if that's what you're thinking of in terms of, having those events, that, would not be involved with what we're looking at this evening.
So today, if you put a food truck in Farmville, it's $50 today. Is that correct? Today. If I wanted to put a food truck in here tomorrow, it's $50 for the day.
No, we would not currently have another. Right now, what we've been working on.
Let me restate. Clarify what the $50 a day has been and what is it now.
So the daily fee, that was initially the $50.
Okay.
And then when the moratorium come into place, the agreement that was between the town and Mr. Shirley right now is currently our only food truck that's operating in town is the $50 daily fee.
But you answered my question. Today, it is $50.
That's correct.
$50. And we're hearing a $25 a day increase. That's what we're looking at for this part. Is that where we are?
Sounds like it.
$25 a day. That's what we're asking for. Okay? All right. Everything else has been addressed in this except that one thing, correct?
I believe so.
You think so? I will refer at this point to town attorney. Have we addressed everything to keep us where we need to be?
Yeah, I mean, you've outlined all the things that are included in the order, or Mr. Oaks has. As far as I know, really the only issue was, or is price at this point.
Okay. The price has been where we are? So what I would be looking for at this time would be a motion to accept the ordinance as written and changing the daily fee to $75. That's what we're looking for. Is that the motion to pass this ordinance? Is that correct? I'm doing this for the benefit of the gallery now, so that they can, I hope they can hear me over this, okay?
But I think there was one other issue.
Okay, what is that?
To revisit the number of
Right.
days.
Yep, that was what we're going to get to next. You have the number of.
Everything as is, changing the price and revisit the number of days.
Okay. So if we revisit the number of days, what would you want the end game to be?
Just for clarification, I thought we were revisiting the number that could operate per day, not the number of days in town.
Number of trucks.
Okay, Commissioner Hobbs said number of trucks.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What is the end game? What is this, when does this affect? How much do we pass this ordinance as it is and go back and come back and say we've revisited, now we're going to let this many food trucks come? Is that what you're talking about?
Now, I believe if I
Make it
understood the
real
discussion
clear
correctly.
now. I want it to be real clear.
Yeah. I believe if I understood the discussion correctly, I believe there wanted to be some discussion about potentially removing the cap on the number that could operate, if I understood correctly.
Okay. So now, that brings us to a motion that would require the daily number that we've talked about, and now we got to insert the number of trucks that can come a day.
I believe we would be eliminating the number of trucks. We currently have in the ordinance a maximum of 2 trucks that could come a day. I believe we're
So you want to say that what I'm hearing now is if we remove that, you can have 50 in here in one day?
If we don't have anything else set. What I'm hearing is that there want to be, a removal of that to not, limit the opportunities for multiple food trucks to come, with the example being if 2 come at lunchtime and none are here at dinner time, then that kind of, takes out that, possibility of somebody else coming later in the evening.
So just to be clear, if you wrote 5, 6 food trucks a day at $75 a day and they meet the requirements of where they're supposed to be, is that what we're talking about now? Okay. All right. So now I need to hear that is how it would read that comes out of this, so the person that makes a motion would ask that that be pulled out of the ordinance, right or wrong? There you go. All right. Was there anything else in there?
I'm going to try this.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we accept the proposed amendment with the exception of changing the 125 to 75 and removing the cap of the number of trucks that could come at one time. Does that get it?
That gets it. All right. The way I'm understanding this, Dr. Hobbs has made a motion that the daily fee be $75, and we remove the number of truck cap that is in the ordinance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that the way you understood it, Chris?
Yes.
Is that the way you understood it, board? There's a motion on the floor by Dr. Hobbs. Is there discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Now,
What?
let me share that with you, sir. This board, years ago, even when Mayor Mason was here, we don't have a second because we're so small. But while the gallery's here, I'd like to move quickly to item number K2, if I could, David, while people are still here. If that's agreeable with the board, I'd like to move to item K2. Is that agreeable? Item K2, I'm going to ask the board to consider this. Would you consider putting on the May agenda any fees that are raised from food trucks, that the money be a line item to supply and help fund children that may not have a baseball glove or baseball bat, tennis shoes, that can participate in our recreation programs? And I'll ask the town manager if it's agreeable with the board, if we could get that on the agenda and look at the ins and outs of that and see if that can be done.
Yes, sir, we can place it on the agenda.
Thank you. Citizen comments. This is another thing. You don't have to stand up. All you got to do is give your name and where you live. You're limited to 3 minutes. But it has to pertain to anything that happened here tonight, so you may understand. So you go ahead.
Okay, my name is Celia Stone. I live at 3264 North Waverly Street. And I would just love some clarification for J10 and J11 for the amendments that you voted on. Could someone please say explicitly if anything changed that has to do with fees? How much did it cost to use any meeting room at the library? How much will it cost? How much did it cost to use any room at the community center? How much will it cost?
Okay, thank you. David, can you address that publicly through your next newsletter or whatever, how that works? I'm sure that would be a... Anyone else?
We don't normally answer. We don't normally give you an answer.
No answers are given. We put somebody on it so that they can answer it and do the necessary, make sure all the answers are there when we do. David Miller will handle that. Anybody else? Anybody else like to speak? Seeing at that point, we have each commissioner to make a comment to close out the meeting. With Commissioner Elks. I'll tell you what, I'm going to back up and let you come on there, Ms. Hopkins, because that's something I wanted to share with you anyway.
Yes, sir.
I was going to catch you before you got out of here, so please, go ahead.
All right, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the town of Farmville, the Board of Commissioners, Mayor Moore. Thank you for opening the floor yet again for citizen comments. This is type of government transparency that allows us to do our civic duty. In reference to item K, the public hearing that you just, voted on, you all just showed us again how you do not actually listen to what it is that we're saying as citizens that we need. It wasn't just the fee that was an issue. It was also the proximity to the business district as well as the days of operations because, with free trade and, how we are in America, you're putting a cap on how much a person can make while you're also, regulating what they should pay you because you feel like they're not being taxed. Earlier this evening, our mayor spoke on how beautiful the town of Farmville is, or how it looks, and it's quite obvious. Again, he did not hear or care to hear the comments of Ms. Stone that she had just said moments before. You cannot put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and say that we are healed. North Farmville's beautification project is going along just fine and dandy, and we appreciate that. However, South Farmville is suffering from decades of gross negligence, be it lack of recreation for kids and adults alike, lack of career development, almost little to no business and economic growth, with a few pop-up businesses here and there. Why would you not look at our Farmville Central High School, 3-time state champions, and see the need for a future multi-sports complex here? Our neighborhood is dying like an unwatered flower. And we are a strong lot of people with big hearts, but we suffer from over-government and lack of resources. The dire need for internet connectivity throughout the town is past desperation. I'm not going to comment on the rumors that I heard on why we don't have it. I'm just going to move forward. However, we know that it would increase our education systems if kids were able to actually work and virtually from home. Those kids don't have internet. I've seen it myself. Having worked in politics as a campaign manager and a field director in Washington, D.C., Montgomery County, one of the richest counties in America, and Baltimore, I'm very well versed in political rigmarole. So please, let's cut it out. Hi, Commissioner Hobbs, I'm glad to see you home. The issue is that there is no two Farmvilles, North Farmville and South Farmville. It's just Farmville.
Correct. Ms. Hopkins, as I asked David Miller to address the questions concerning the library, if you are willing, I'll take time after this and address each one of your topics as soon as this is over, and I think I can answer a lot of your questions if you're willing to do that. Won't take me long, and thank you. With that being said, I'll start with Bert, and I'll go to my right. Bert.
Meeting was over a lot quicker than I expected. And nice to have a public back in here. We have not had that in a long time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shack.
You know, as I sit here, I try to figure out why is it so hard for us to make small decisions, versus, the time that we spend on this truck, and while we're not trying to hinder anybody from being able to be productive out in the working world, for those people who make money, who sets up these trucks and do the other things that they do in town to promote them. But I'm just wondering, I mean, it seemed like we had something that was going to work, and I see now we reduced it down to what, $75 from the $125, and now will that help? Will the vendors be in better shape doing that?
Good question, sir. Very good question. And I thank you for your comments. Commissioner Dixon.
Good meeting tonight, and I appreciate the board's comments, even when I wasn't able to be a part of the comments. So I think y'all did a good job.
Dr. Hobbs.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that I was very pleased to hear the citizen participation tonight, because that's what it's all about, is getting an understanding between everyone. I raised the question earlier, what was a reasonable cost? I didn't hear one. Sometimes it's how we communicate. If we didn't hear you, it wasn't because we were not trying to hear you. And I think that I asked questions because I wanted to make an informed decision. And what I heard was, I didn't hear any alternative to our suggestions. But I do appreciate being here, and I hope that you will come back for all the issues that we addressed for the town, because we are all here because we want the best for Farmville. And I'm just happy to play a small role in that.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Elks.
I want to thank everyone that participated tonight. I want to thank our citizens, as always, for reaching out and letting us, and talking to us. I also want to thank the Recreation Department. I understand that They had a Easter egg drive-by this past week to help our children be able to participate in Easter. I've seen our soccer fields very full in the last couple of weeks with not only little ones, but some big, tall fellows too that have been out and about. And I want to thank my fellow board members for allowing us to discuss things, for trying to make the very best decisions that we can for each and every citizen in and out of Farmville. And I can tell you, I sleep well at night because I know that when we finished, I've made the best decision I can. So I thank you all. I thank you all for what this board does.
Thank you, ma'am. A couple of things tonight. One of the things a public hearing is designed to do is to give everybody a chance to be heard. And tonight, it was very respectful to the board, and that's what a public hearing is. I think years ago, we initiated the citizens' comments at the beginning and at the end because so many things will go on that maybe you have a question about. But it's really easy when it comes to questions. All you have to do is call the town hall. Just like tonight, when we directed an answer to David Miller of a citizen's concern, the answer went to him. Rich Moore, is Rich still here?
No, sir.
You know, Rich and his crew would have been way ahead of schedule if we had not had so much rain. But yet the previous boards that came before us allowed certain parts of Farmville to go unattended. Dr. Hobbs, 80 years, as you and I know. And that has been something, as Commissioner Shackelford said, is we're catching up from what other boards should have done, and sometimes that's easy to neglect. This board has been very forthcoming. Operating during a COVID, when other towns took their and just went into a COVID bunker, we did not. We continued to work hard every day and to seek out government funds and things that we needed to make Farmville grow. We went over and worked as hard as we could to keep our citizens informed as much as we could about everything. With that being said, I want you to know, thank you for being here tonight. It means an awful lot to this board for y'all to come and to be heard, but each one of these commissioners have a phone number. My number was published in 2009, and it's very easy to remember. It's 227-WORK. It's easy to remember, 227-WORK. And all you got to do is call. This board tonight made a decision, as Commissioner Shackelford said, that should have been made a long time ago. But we wanted to do the moratorium, we wanted to do the research, we wanted to do the homework and make for sure that we did the right thing. Even tonight, in repeating things that you already knew, we did that so that there was a clear understanding of where this board was going and why we were going there. That's what it's all about. This board has tried very hard to move forward. This board has an answer, or we know where we can get the answer, and all you need to do is call and ask. Call and ask, and we will get somebody to you to answer your question, regardless of what it is. It may not be done today, but we will get the answer for you. This board will get an answer, and all we do is ask you to give us an opportunity to find an answer, to give you the facts. With that being said, board, is there a motion we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Hopkins, if you'll give me a minute.